morning. This lecture video is going to go over some of the other structures that are part of the lymphatic system. So we're going to look at the lymph nodes and the malts. We're going to look at the tonsils, the thymus, the spleen, and the Peyer's patch and appendix to kind of talk about what each of these different lymph nodules or lymph organs actually do. So lymph nodes are one of many lymphoid organs, and we talked about lymph nodes in the last video, how lymph is going to enter in through the afferent vessels and then be filtered out within those lymph nodes and then exit back out the efferent vessels, and then they will get delivered to the lymph ducts in your thoracic cavity and back into the circulatory system. So there are other lymphoid organs that are also a part of this process. So they are going to protect the body from infection. However, unlike a lymph node, they don't actually do any filtering of lymph. So that's kind of the biggest difference between the lymph nodes and then the lymph organs. So lymph nodules then are loosely associated tissues. They're different from lymph nodes because they're not surrounded by that capsule that we talked about, like lymph nodes are, and then lymph organs are also surrounded by the capsule. So lymph nodules are kind of some groups of tissue that play a role in lymph. They don't filter and they aren't surrounded by a capsule, which makes them a little bit structurally different. Let's start with where some of the lymph organs are found. So we're going to start with the spleen. The spleen is found in the upper left part of the abdomen. Inside the capsule of the spleen that surrounds it, it contains two types of tissues. There's white pulp tissue, and this tissue is going to be made up of lymphatic tissue and then lymph nodules, and its job is to kind of help filter the blood. And then there's red pulp tissue, which is going to remove worn out red blood cells, and it helps serve as a reservoir for stored blood. So your spleen plays a really important role in basically cleaning out our dead and dying red blood cells to get rid of them, and then also helps play a role in filtering our blood. And you can see on the diagram where your spleen is located. It kind of sits like right behind your stomach area on the left side of your body. The thymus gland is not only part of your lymphatic system, but it's also considered part of the endocrine system. And what happens with your thymus gland is this is located up on top, so you can kind of see it. It's the most probably superior lymph organ. But after those T lymphocytes are formed in your bone marrow, they travel to the thymus, and when they get to the thymus, they become it's like they're going to school, for lack of a better term. They start to, in the thymus, those T lymphocytes learn how to recognize very specific foreign invaders, so that when those foreign invaders come into our body, then these T lymphocytes are going to be able to recognize them and then be able to mount an attack on them. When you need to produce T lymphocytes, so when any of those foreign invaders enter into your body and we want to be able to start producing more of these specific T lymphocytes, this will be also regulated by your thymus. So your thymus is going to releases a hormone called thymosin, and this is going to regulate how quickly we're producing T lymphocytes. So when we're ill, we're going to be producing T lymphocytes at a much faster rate than we will be when we are not. All right, so lymph nodules, again, like I mentioned, are often associated with mucous membranes because when foreign invaders become trapped in here, so they are also called the mucosa-associated lymphoid tissues. That's where the MALT comes in. So they can either be scattered in the mucous membrane tissue, or we can actually have them bundled together in very specific locations. So for instance, your Your appendix and tonsils are really good examples of location where lymph nodules are found in a higher concentration. So your appendix and tonsils aren't technically a lymph organ, but they're a bundle of these malt lymphoidal tissues. So if we start with your tonsils, this is going to be the accumulation of lymphoid nodules on either side of your throat. So you can kind of feel along those. Oftentimes when you have strep throat, they'll go and they'll feel those to see whether or not they're swollen. And basically what they do is they form a protective ring around the throat to protect the body from foreign invaders that are entering in through the nose or through the mouth. So it's a part of our immune response in terms of it helps protect us from things that are entering in through our nose and mouth. And you can see here where these tissues are going to be kind of located. Here's the lingual tonsil down in here, and then there's the palatine tonsil, which is up in here, and then there's the adenoid tonsils, which are going to be located up back here closer to your ear. So these tonsils, we always just think of the ones that are right in our neck, but there's actually 3 that are going to be in our head and neck region. And again, protection against things coming in through our nose and things coming in through our mouths. Sometimes we remove the adenoid tissue or the tonsil tissues if they're constantly getting infected. There's also a grouping of lymph nodules found in what's called the Pryor's patch and the appendix. So, the Pryor's patch is a group of lymphocytes that are going to be located right near the small intestines, and they are going to help. So here's where your appendix is going to be, and here's where your Pryor patch is going to be. So both of them are kind of tucked into your intestines, and both of them are going to attempt to filter bacteria from food and then prevent good bacteria that we want from the intestines from causing infection to the rest of the body. So basically, the tonsils are going to protect your head and neck from bacterial infections, viruses. They're going to trap things that are up there. And then the Pryor's patch and the appendix is going to protect your lower gut from bacteria that's in food and from helping the bacteria that's in your gut not cause infection. So these are the lymph nodules and some of the lymph organs that are part of the lymphatic system. So if we were to make a summary of this, lymph tissue is found all over the body. It's encapsulated in lymph organs like the spleen and the thymus gland, and then in loosely associated tissues called the lymph nodules. And examples of the lymph nodules are going to be your tonsils, your Pryor patches, and your appendix. All of them are going to play a role in blood cell formation and immune response. And then they're all going to, again, end up joining with our circulatory system in order to help move lymph and white blood cells to where they need to go.